Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us. My name is Matt Jessic, and I'm with the Office of Planning. I think maybe we'll wait one more minute just to see if a few other folks join us, but thanks for signing on. Well, maybe I'll go ahead and get started, and other folks can join us along the way if they're running late. So thanks again, everyone, for being here. My name is Matt Jessic. I'm a development review specialist with the Office of Planning. And joining me today is Joel Lawson, the Associate Director at the Office of Planning for Development Review. And we're excited to have you guys here with us. We are looking forward to getting ANC feedback on the Office of Planning's latest proposed zoning text amendment, and this is to address issues that we've seen over the years regarding alley lots. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully you can see my presentation on the screen, but give me a sign if any of those technical issues crop up. And before we get into the meeting, just to let everyone know, we are recording this. It will be posted on our website for anyone who couldn't make this meeting or the meeting on Tuesday that we had. Those meetings will be available to view on the website as well as the presentation itself. So thanks again for joining us. We want to get your feedback before we present any proposed text amendments to the Zoning Commission. We're having these two ANC meetings this week. And what I'll do, I'll give a short presentation about alley lots and what our proposals are to change the regulations for alley lots. And then we can have a discussion about it. It looks like we have a smaller group today, so I think we can have a nice sort of informal discussion. Just right off the bat, as a quick overview, the three primary areas that we're looking at in the regulations are the subdivision rules for alley lots, the use regulations for alley lots, and then development standards, which are things like lot occupancy and yard requirements. It's certainly not rewriting the whole rule book on alley lots. It's not a complete overhaul. We feel the changes are fairly targeted, but we hope they'll be useful to folks and property owners. So how did we get here? The real impetus was from the Zoning Commission, who heard a previous alley lot text amendment, case 1913, approved about 5 years ago. And we can get into what that was about. It addressed one issue with alley lots. But at that time, at the hearing for that case, they heard from alley lot owners saying we really needed to go farther. That the changes at that time were not sufficient to really address their concerns about alley lots. And I think that resonated with the Zoning Commission. And so they asked us to give it a further study. And so that's what this current text amendment is all about. And since that time, we've also heard from the BZA, that's the Board of Zoning Adjustment, that the alley lot rules really need a second look. We've heard from the alley lot owners over the years with giving us their feedback. And then even an agency like DC Water, they have their thoughts on how alley lots should be developed if we are to make any changes to the regulations. And then finally, we also always on all of our projects take guidance from the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan certainly supports any opportunities for new housing, but also in general, better utilization of underutilized lots, especially when they're in transit-rich or very walkable neighborhoods. So that's kind of how this current text amendment came about. Now, just as a refresher, um, I think probably many of you have dealt with alley lots in your ANCs, but just to review, an alley lot is a lot that, as its name suggests, only fronts on an alley and has no street frontage. So all of the regulations that we're talking about today um, would only impact alley lots, not street-facing lots. And I should also say, some folks have raised a question about this particular image. This was just an example image that we picked, but alley lots certainly come in all different shapes and sizes and configurations and relationships to the street-facing lots. So this is just one example. As we've gotten into this process, we've started to collect data about alley lots, including where they're located. And they are all over the city, more or less, but there are concentrations where you might expect in the older row home neighborhoods like Capitol Hill and Georgetown. And some ANCs hardly have any. We have ANCs with one or two alley lots. So the changes may have more interest to some ANCs than others. Some other data we're trying to collect for the existing uses on alley lots. We know that many are used for residential today, commercial uses, parking. Some are used for gardens, some are just vacant. So we want to try and quantify that. Also, the width of the alleys, how wide are the alleys upon which these lots sit? That may impact how they can be used in the future. That's some of the data that we're working on collecting. So that's just a little bit of background. I think we can maybe get into the regulations a little bit now. And again, that first area that we're looking at are the subdivision rules. And we're not really changing many of these. One area we are looking at is the required alley width for an alley lot subdivision. Right now, 24 feet is required. And we're proposing to reduce that to 15 feet. 15 feet is a common alley width in the district. And based on our experience, many of the lots that we deal with are on 15-foot alleys. Certainly not all. Some would still fall below that standard. And again, that's something we're trying to quantify. We're not changing the lot area minimum for matter of right projects, not changing the frontage requirements or how lots can be combined or converted today. One thing we are looking at is creating a special exception mechanism so the Board of Zoning Adjustment can review any proposals that may fall below the minimum standards. Okay, and the next area that we're looking at is the use permissions on alley lots. And let's start with our R1 and R2 zones. These are our low density detached and semi-detached residential zones. And today you cannot do residential on an alley lot in those zones. And what we're proposing is that they more closely match what you can do on a street-facing lot. That is one principal unit plus an accessory unit. And the ability to do that accessory unit would either be a matter of right if your lot is over the lot area minimum threshold, or a special exception process would be required if you're under the minimum lot area threshold. A similar mechanism would apply in the R3 zones, where today you're allowed 1 unit per lot. We are proposing that you also be allowed an accessory unit. And R3 is one of our row house zones. RF is another very common row house zone, where today you can do 1 unit per lot. We're proposing, similar to the other zones that I mentioned, that you can do 2 units. In this case, it'd be 2 principal units. And again, that'd be based on the lot area that you have if you're above or below the minimum, would either be a matter of right or a special exception. And then in the RA zones, which are our apartment zones, we proposed 2 units per lot, where today you can do 1 unit per lot. Also for residential zones, there is another lot width, or excuse me, an alley width requirement, and that's 24 feet today. We propose to reduce that to 15 feet in all cases. You can do it down to 15 in some instances today if you're within 300 feet of a street. We want that to apply universally. And then there is a special exception mechanism today. If you fall below that standard, we would not be changing that. That would still exist. All of the other uses on alley lots would remain unchanged. Everything from agriculture to storage, those would not change. And if I'm going too quickly through anything, we can come back at the end and spend as much time as we need on any particular questions that you might have. Okay, use permissions in commercial zones. We are not changing anything here. Today on an alley lot, you can do whatever you can do on a street facing lot, and that would remain the same going forward. Now, the third area we're looking at is the development standards, and this is getting more into the nitty gritty of the regulations, so I'll try and hit the highlights. In our lower density zones, we certainly expect, more openness, a little bit more greenery. So to reflect that intent of those zones, we actually want to make the lot occupancy requirements more strict. Right now, 80% is the most restrictive lot occupancy. And in fact, there's not a maximum for the smallest lots. What we're proposing is to actually start at 80% lot occupancy and then step down to 40% for the largest lots. And that would match what we have on street-facing lots today. So hopefully this would help maintain the openness of the R1 and R2 zones. Similarly, for yards in the R1 zone, we want to increase the yard requirement in those zones. Right now, 5 feet is required. We want to bump that up to 8 feet in the R1. On height for alley lot buildings, and you'll see this in all of the zones that we go through, 20 feet is allowed today. We want to bump that up 2 feet to 22 feet, and that would align with what's permitted today for accessory buildings. On to the RF zones. Again, these are our row house zones. No real substantive changes here. I mentioned the height that we'd be tweaking. Also, clarification to the wording for the yard requirements, but it would still be 5 feet. Now, RA, these are our apartment zones. It's interesting, there's no lot occupancy prescribed for alley lots today. So we want to insert a standard, and we're borrowing this language from the row house zones so it would match up. Now, many of you are familiar with Section 5201 of the regulations. This comes through the ANCs fairly often, which is sort of a blanket special exception. It applies both to street-facing lots and to alley lots, but they're not quite consistent. We want to add the ability to seek relief from lot occupancy for alley lots where it doesn't exist today, and that would match up with our street-facing lots. And then the final, major change we're looking at, just like in the RA zones, we are inserting a lot occupancy provision in the MU zones. These are our mixed use zones, which are typical along commercial corridors. So we would just be applying a standard where none exists today. And that's it as far as the major text changes. As far as text amendments go, we do feel this one's fairly targeted, but we hope it will be helpful to property owners and neighbors and the ANCs as well. Just wanted to talk about process a little bit. We're having these ANC meetings this week, and we view this as an initial contact with the ANCs. We anticipate future meetings. This zoning commission process will be like any other zoning commission process from the ANC's point of view. You will get notice from the Office of Zoning prior to any public hearing. You'll be given great weight in front of the zoning commission, so you can provide written testimony, oral testimony at any hearing. So it should be a similar process to what you're used to for other zoning commission cases. And I should say also, we really appreciate you being here, taking time out of your day. And I know Office of Planning has reached out to ANCs a lot lately, and there's more to come. But we appreciate you guys giving us input on all of these projects, especially this one today, of course. But thanks for that. As I think I mentioned, we are in pretty constant contact with a group of alley lot owners. We're meeting with them again tomorrow to kind of go over the same information. We'll continue outreach to other city agencies. We've already reached out to FEMS. We've heard from DC Water. We'll reach out to DPW, DDOT, maybe DOEE to get their feedback on these changes. Continue collecting data also on alley lots, like I mentioned. And with all that, we'll prepare a written report to the Zoning Commission, and we hope to present it to them in May. That's what we're shooting for. That's the set-down meeting. If anyone's not familiar with that term, that's just the meeting where the Zoning Commission decides if a project is ready to move forward to a public hearing. And they may send us back to the drawing board, or they may move us forward, or give us some suggestions. It's really up to them. Assuming they do kind of send us forward towards a public hearing, that's when we anticipate some additional public outreach. We'll take the feedback that we get from you guys, from the alley lot owners, from the general public, and of course anything that the Zoning Commission, any feedback they give us, try to respond to all of that, wrap it up into our final proposal, which would go to the public hearing. And we don't anticipate that that would happen prior to the fall of this year. So that's kind of, I think, everything I wanted to say about the process. But yeah, would love to get your thoughts on alley lots. In your ANCs, have you dealt with a project that you thought was a really nice solution for an alley lot? Did you encounter any particular issues or problems? What opportunities do alley lots provide for us? Also, just a reminder, our website is up and running. We have some basic information on there. The presentations will be going up on the website, these ANC presentations, and the recordings of the meetings. And please feel free to email us anytime at alleylots@dc.gov for any additional questions or feedback. But yeah, that's all from me on my presentation, but would love to hear back from you guys about your thoughts. I see Commissioner Bowers. Do I have that right?
Yeah, correct. Isaac Bowers, ANC 3A03.
Right.
I was just elected this cycle. Sorry if there's any background noise there.
Good.
So I'm new to this. I don't even know if there are any alley lots in the 3A03 district. But I was wondering if you could go into a little more detail on the lot occupancy. So that's like the percentage of the total lot that could be occupied by housing or presumably other uses. Is that correct?
Exactly. That's the percentage of a lot, and I can go back up to that. Let's find that. This is a good example, I guess, as any.
Right.
Yeah, it's the percentage of a lot, basically the footprint can occupy of a building. Um, so if your lot is 1,000 square feet and your lot occupancy maximum is 40%, then the footprint of the building essentially could be 400 square feet.
Right. So I guess I'm curious why. So these are alley lots, so it's just alleys on one side and the other. I'm curious why the concern in places like the R zones, where I get, lower density, street facing, it kind of makes sense to, you know, abide by that R1, R2 zone space, but it feels like in an alley lot where it's just alleys on either side and no street facing. Um, I'm not quite clear on the policy rationale for limiting it.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I mean, certainly, yeah, in the row house zones, we kind of expect buildings to be very close together. In the lower density zones, um, we do expect a little bit more space in the yards. Um, the lot occupancy, like you said, for street facing lots is lower. I think where we've heard concerns from some folks is, they've had this open space behind them for, basically forever, or, however long they've lived there. And they want to maintain the character of their neighborhood. Um, so how can we do that? I think for the smaller lots, like you see on this chart, your lot occupancy permissions would still be higher than the street facing lots, at least under our proposal as it stands. Um, it's not till you get to the much larger lots where you have a lower lot occupancy. Um, similar with the yards right now, uh, with an 8 foot side yard proposal, that would match the side yards for street facing lots. That would actually be smaller than the rear yard requirement for a street facing lot. So I think there is a slightly larger kind of you potential footprint that we can realize. Um, and the other thing is, not all alley lots are surrounded by alleys. Some kind of do back up to other street facing houses. All this is to say, we're trying to balance, allowing a little bit more flexibility in terms of use, but trying to maintain the same character in the low density zones.
So just so I understand, like, how this might work out in practice, let's say you had an alley lot, a row houses on an alley, and all of the row houses were currently occupying 60% of the lot, and 40% of the lot was kind of like yard space, and somebody wanted to extend their particular house outwards, they would be limited to 80%, say, in an R1 zone of 3,000 square feet, as opposed to being able to take up the entire, um, occupy their entire lot. And the idea would be that the neighbors wouldn't have their kind of view of the yard going down interfered with too much up and down the row. Is that kind of how it would work out in practice? Is that what you see people objecting to?
Well, it's hard to say, on any particular example what would happen. Yeah, I think we would just need to look at each individual case. What is the present lot occupancy? What are they proposing? What does that mean for um, you know for the proposed lot occupancy on their property? And would that proposal kick them into a special exception process where the ANC could weigh in, the neighbors could weigh in before the Board of Zoning Adjustment, and then the Board of Zoning Adjustment obviously would ultimately decide those types of questions.
Hi, I also wanted to just make sure it's understood that the
the information, hi everybody, this is Joel from the Office of Planning. Sorry, that the information that Matt is presenting is just for alley lots. The provisions that apply right now to street fronting lots would not change. So, for example, in our zones, the typical lot occupancy that's permitted is 40% now for a street fronting lot, and that would not change as part of these proposals. But Matt is looking at what do we think are the appropriate development standards for alley lots, as opposed to street fronting lots.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I'm just kind of wondering intuitively it feels to me like if you're part of if you're in a row of houses that are all facing out just on alleys, in other words, it's an alley lot thing, it's going to be probably more packed. You would kind of expect it to be a little more packed, a little more dense than a street facing one. And so I'm just, I'm not quite sure why we would restrict that at this point in time. Since historically that seems like it's been the case. I don't know if there's a particular case or anecdote you can share with me, or if you have like an example, a photo of an existing lot where you could show like, here's the current restriction on lot occupancy, and here's how it would work out in practice. It would just help me visualize it.
Yeah, we could certainly come up with some, I guess, sample site plans or something like that. I think that the scenario that you're describing with, kind of multiple row house type development, that would mostly be in zones like the RF zones where we're not proposing any changes to the lot occupancy. And there are the higher lot occupancy standards already. So I think that the type of development that you're describing would still be possible in the denser parts of the city.
Yeah, definitely get that. My particular neighborhood tends to be a little less dense, more single family housing. Like I said, I don't even know if we have any alley lots. But just generally looking at the city across the board, definitely a little bit of a housing crunch. I feel as if we have to have a pretty good policy justification to reduce the occupancy that people can add on to their lots. And I guess what I'm understanding is you're kind of taking an approach where it's less than full occupancy but more than a street facing occupancy, and kind of doing something in between those areas. But again, like that's just kind of a number. So I just would like to know, I guess maybe you have a specific example where you can show that this would make a significant difference to the neighbors and how they would be impinged by a full occupancy of a lot that faces out on the alley.
Well, I really appreciate these comments. It sounds like if I can sum up what you're saying, that you would be supportive of either not reducing the lot occupancy in these lower density zones or having some higher number. Is that a fair summary of your thoughts?
Yeah, my baseline would be, unless we've observed major problems with this over the years, to allow the full lot occupancy. So my bias would be towards, let's demonstrate why this reduced lot occupancy would be, a public good that overcomes the kind of idea that people should be able to expand and we need more housing and more room for families in the district.
Understood. Thank you for that. Um, and I see there's a comment in the chat um, about do we have maps available to show where the alley lots are for ANC 2E? And let's see, would also be interested in how to easily find out where alley lots are in each ANC. We do have their locations. We can provide individual maps that they're very hard to kind of show at a citywide scale. So yeah, we can if there are sort of specific requests, and we've already got one for 2E actually the other night. We can certainly provide those. But folks should feel free to speak up if you have any comments or questions. Anyone else? Any
I think there's a
thoughts
hand
or
raised from Paula Edwards.
yes, go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
Hi, thank you. If I understand you correctly, this is primarily an effort to synchronize the regulations between front-facing lots and alley-facing lots. Is that correct?
I think there'd certainly be more alignment in terms of uses. Maybe in the lower density zones, a little closer alignment in terms of lot occupancy and yard requirements. So yeah, there'd be a little bit more cohesion, I guess you could say, in the regs.
Okay. And how would this affect ADUs?
Well, accessory units, presently they're permitted on street-facing lots in the R zones, so R1, R2, R3. But they're not permitted on alley lots. In fact, no residential is permitted on alley lots in R1 and R2. So what we're proposing is that in those zones, all three of those zones, R1, R2, R3, you could do a principal unit plus an accessory unit. And that accessory unit would either be a matter of right if you meet the lot area minimums, or it would be by special exception if you do not.
Okay, so anyone who had an alley-facing lot would need a special exception to build an ADU. Is that correct? Did I understand you correctly?
Not quite. Our proposal would be that if they meet the lot area minimum for the zone, that accessory unit could be a matter of right.
Oh, all right. Okay, thank you. And in my SMD, I think we have one or two. The problem we have more, and I suppose this won't address it, is we have like little islands in the middle of the alley. And they're little privately owned property islands. And people aren't maintaining them, and I don't know, it's just really complicated, but I don't think this addresses that. But thank you very much. This is helpful.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that is a comment that we've heard from both neighbors and alley lot owners that sometimes these lots, if they can't be used for something else, they just get neglected and, can be overgrown or worse, and, act like a sort of a dumping ground sometimes. So if we can put them to some kind of productive use while still, maintaining neighborhood character, I think that's something we'd be in favor of.
Great. So can we talk offline about that? Because we have a real problem with one in our neighborhood that we'd like to have addressed. And I don't know if you as a regulatory agency can help us with that, but someone needs to. One other question. Well, this won't affect DPW trash collection, things like that go on in alleys at all, I assume.
No, I mean, we definitely want to get feedback from DPW, but we're not proposing to, reduce the size of alleys or anything like that. Alleys serve an important function for services. And so we don't want to actually impinge on the alley space itself, which is, district property, not private property. So as far as the kind of enforcement issues go, I know Department of Buildings has a vacant property enforcement sort of hotline, I believe. So I can try and find that information and get that to you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Kaufman, I see your hand is raised.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon. Yes, I also am interested in maps for ANC 4D of alley lots. I wanted to say that I really like and support the idea of the matter of rights proposal here for accessory units in the R zones. I think it makes a lot of sense. And don't have as many in my ANC, but or SMD in particular. But I appreciate the I think it aligns with like the purpose and provides opportunity for more housing here in DC. I also had questions around the development standards for the and you don't need to go back to the slide regarding the R zones because I too kind of wonder, do we need to change to those proposed, limitations? And you said something around like, perhaps we can provide some sample, kind of site proposals. And I think I'm going to hold on to those questions and then, look at that because I think I just don't have those types of lots in my ANC. And so it's just kind of hard for me to conceptualize, but I think that's a question mark that will be perhaps illuminated if you do share that kind of samples for us to peruse.
Yeah, we're happy to do that. We'll try and do sort of standard examples. You might say, I think folks always say, well, that's not like the alley lot in my neighborhood, and that wouldn't
For
apply
sure.
here.
Yeah.
So, but we'll do our best to try and come up with some examples.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is very helpful.
Oh, thank you. Any other thoughts or questions? Did I go over anything too quickly, or like I said, we'll be reaching out again, assuming the zoning commission moves us forward. Thank you, Commissioner Kaufman. Yeah, any other final thoughts, or Joel, do you have any concluding thoughts?
Hi, no concluding thoughts for me. Thanks again to all of you for turning out for this. If other thoughts or questions come to mind, feel free to reach out to us. Matt, I think do we have a slide showing the contact information? I know everybody will be able to see that once the presentation is up on the website, but here we go. So there's our email address. If you have thoughts or questions, or reach out to us in any way you can. It's kind of perfect timing for us to be getting your thoughts and your experiences on alley lots as we're kind of refining the proposal and getting it ready to take forward to the zoning commission. So yeah, really appreciate your time. And I'll turn it back to you, Matt. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Paula Edwards. I have one last question. I'm sorry.
Sure,
Now,
sure.
these lots only have entrance and egress from the alley. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. Yes. They only front on alleys.
Oh, all right. So then that's is that a DOT issue about how entrance and egress works, or?
Well, I think generally speaking, they're concerned about, how people get around, on foot or on bike or by vehicle. So they will be interested in how the alleys are being used. But I think in the past, they've generally been supportive of, you know, when there have been these alley lot projects, they've not had any concerns with them. I can't speak with that for them in all cases, but generally speaking, I think they're supportive of these types of projects.
Okay. And historically, is there any, did you see anything in the historical record about why they were originally zoned this way, or?
we're very fortunate in the Office of Planning, in our historic preservation office. We literally have the person who wrote the book on alley lots, his, architectural historian Kim Williams, and she has her book goes through the history of alley lots. It's fascinating. The original purposes were just there were larger street facing lots, but maybe starting right before the Civil War, and then especially during and after the Civil War, people started carving off the back of their lots, really because there was a housing shortage in the city. And this was a place where smaller, generally speaking, less, permanent housing could be constructed relatively cheaply. And that's really where our alley lots came from originally. So that's a super brief summary, but they've always been sort of a little bit different than the street facing counterparts. And certainly around the 1930s, I think there was a strong push actually to eliminate alley housing. It was seen as unsanitary, et cetera. But I think these days, with obviously modern sanitation and utilities, it's an opportunity, we feel like, for the district, where there already are some housing units, but maybe we can have a few more.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, if that's it, just again, thank you, everyone, and really appreciate your time. And we'll be reaching out again, and I'll try to follow back up with some of the information we spoke about today. So thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.